simple. This alien ache was probably my first and last experience of unadulterated pain, which perplexed me more than it hurt me. "Are you all right, dear?" Interrupted in my twilight, I looked up to see Mrs. Minkin, who was on playground duty that afternoon. She fell into the category of scary adults, and from there into the subcategory of adults with cooties. In her plaid wool skirts and thick makeup, luridly ugly to schoolchildren's eyes, Mrs. Minkin was not someone to whom I was willing to admit distress. "I'm fine, thank you." And I was fine. As quickly as it had happened, the sharp ache in my jaw receded and my sense of self transported itself back to the playground. I quickly stood up and brushed myself off. The looming issue now was how far back in line I would have to stand because of this bothersome delay. By the time I was back in the classroom, I had forgotten the incident entirely. I was reminded of it again that evening as I sat on the living room rug earnestly trying to whip up a book report I had been putting off for 2 weeks. Now, to my grave dismay, the report was due the very next day. Gradually, I became aware of possible salvation. I had a toothache. This wasn't as welcome a reason for staying home from school as a cold or a fever, because it would entail a visit to the dentist. Had it been only a minor toothache, I'd probably have preferred to suffer the wrath of my teacher rather than my mother's inevitable agitation. But now that I had noticed the ache, it seemed to be worsening steadily. The dentist and I were already well acquainted. I was cursed with terrible teeth. We were told it was a common trait among people of Anglo-Irish descent. But my mother felt personally affronted by this bit of information, and as if by osmosis, I too felt a sense of shame about my teeth. Dr. Singer convinced my parents that if there was to be any chance of my having normal adult teeth growing in, he must be allowed, post-haste, to do everything imaginable to my baby teeth. I can't even remember the work he did, but it seemed as if I went to the dentist every week for some mysterious procedure. No one likes the dentist, but what I resented most about Dr. Singer was that he made a practice of lying to me. "Hold out your thumb and I'll show you how to make your tooth go to sleep so that nothing will hurt it." I'd hold my thumb out. "You see, I'll put this medicine on your tooth just like I'm putting it on your thumb," he'd say as he pushed his syringe slightly into my finger, releasing a jet of clear fluid. "It won't hurt any more than that." Then he'd turn to his instrument tray, his back blocking my view, and switch syringes. Before I could see what flashed before me, he'd stick the needle deftly into my waiting gums. I was always surprised that a simple stream of fluid could hurt so much. Even after he had performed this dirty trick many times, I believed there must be something extraordinarily wrong with my gums. I suspected I had some terrible problem in my mouth, and afraid that complaining would only bring some new and certainly painful treatment, I kept my suspicions to myself. As the evening wore on, I could no longer pretend the toothache wasn't there. Finally, I went to my mother and confessed my pain in the guarded tone I might use to admit the loss or destruction of something valuable. As I had expected, she was angry. Of course she was angry at the situation, at the bother, at the possible cost, but at that age, I had no way to distinguish such subtle gradations. I painfully presumed that her anger was directed at me alone. Only when my father walked into the room and asked what was going on did I remember my collision earlier in the day. This new information seemed to irritate my mother even more, especially when my father, characteristically trying to dissolve the tension of the situation, ventured the prognosis. "She's just got a cold in her tooth, that's all. She'll be fine in the morning." He meant well, but his dismissal of the problem confirmed my mother's belief that she was the only one in the family who faced facts. This was true in a sense, but she never recognized that her anger scared all of us into retreat. By churning problems through her own personal mill, she kept us from ever discussing a problem outright, which in turn exacerbated the problem. My mother was always particularly annoyed when my father put on his good fellow Irishman act and dispensed comforting misinformation about the world, such as the backward notion that a tooth could have a cold in it. I was sent off to bed with 2 aspirins and a promise of reappraisal. "You've got lockjaw." My brothers pronounced this happily the next morning, obviously excited by the idea. I mumbled back to them as best I could. They were only too pleased to describe in detail how I would never open my mouth again, that everything I ate from now on would have to come through a straw. It was true that I had woken up with my jaw swollen and seemingly locked. It didn't hurt when I tried to open it so much as it appeared to be stuck, but a diet of